Hey everybody, Matt from Eastwood. Today we're going to show you how to use the 8-inch heavy-duty Elite bead roller to make a patch panel for this Model T Roadster door all by yourself. So let's get started. I started by cutting a piece slightly larger than what we needed from our patch panel kit. It's always best to work with a larger than needed piece when you begin. I used a set of dividers to find the size of the inner flange of the door. I then transferred a scribed line at the same size to the patch panel. This will become our bend line in the panel. The dividers were then adjusted to the width of the lower bead in the panel. I added the width of the first flange measurement to the width of the bottom bead, and that allowed me to scribe a straight edge off of the bottom of the panel that matched where the top of the bead would land. I then made notes on the panel as to what each line was. I ran a thin marker line over each scribe mark to give better visibility when I am rolling the panel in the bead roller. For the first passes in the bead roller, I installed the offset flanging dies. I pushed the lower die all the way in and tightened the set screw down. I then set the panel in the bead roller and aligned the bend line up with the top of the lower die and slid the top die outwards until it lined up with the step bead line and tightened the set screw down. The upper die was then brought down so that it was sitting just below the lower die, or about half the height of the bead. I ran the panel through the bead roller, keeping the center of the top die on the center of the bead. You can see how after one pass we have flanged the edge of the panel up considerably. I now tightened the top die down a few more cranks until we were twice as deep as before and ran it through the bead roller again. I laid the panel on the door and I could see that the edge has been raised up enough to clear the original bead in the door. With the panel flipped over, I measured to the center of the step or bead area and scribed a line through the panel. For this part of the project, I need to swap out the dies. I installed the 1/2-inch tipping die on the top and the soft poly lower die on the lower shaft. I then tightened the upper wheel down until it was lightly pressing into the soft lower wheel. The panel was installed upside down now, and I ran it through the bead roller on the line I had marked out in the center of the step. As you can see, this put a peak in the center of the step or bead in the panel. The panel was flipped over once again, and I transferred the bend line from the top side of the panel to the bottom. I installed the panel upside down and centered the line I had just drawn in the panel on the upper die. I ran the panel through the bead roller while putting light upward pressure on the outside edge. This helps guide the panel into folding on the bend line we're rolling on. You can see here how we've initiated the bend in one pass. I then ran the panel through the bead roller again, pushing up on the panel even more this time through. With the panel laid on the door, I could see we're closer to fitting the original flange on the door, and I need to make another pass through the bead roller with a little more pressure upwards. At this point, the panel was folded as far as we could go with the 1/2-inch die and was just under 90 degrees. I used a hammer and dolly to bend the panel the last few degrees it needed. You can see here that by using the 1/2-inch wide die to fold the edge, it also rounded the stepped area and blended the bend into the peak that we rolled in the panel before this step. The height of the peak in the bead has been lost a little in the flange folding step, so I ran the panel back through the bead roller upside down on the center of the bead. This gives us a little more definition in the bead and raises the profile to the height that we need. As you can see here, the bead profile fits the door perfectly and is a very close match to the original. The last pass through the bead roller defining the peak of the bead made the peak just a little too sharp, so I used the 2-inch orbital sander with 220 grit paper to blend the peak into the rest of the bead. Finally, I marked, scribed, and cut off the extra width that we didn't need in the panel. Alright, so we got this panel all finished and it fits really, really well. As you can see, the bead that we made on the bottom of this patch matches the original Model T door almost exactly. Now, the Eastwood 8-inch Elite bead roller made this job a breeze because I was able to complete the entire project by myself. Hopefully this video will give you some inspiration for what you can do with the Eastwood forming dies with a little bit of imagination and proper planning of your project. To see all the products that we used in this video and more, make sure you visit eastwood.com.